Welcome back to A Hill with a View. My name is Moshe Hill. We've had a bit of a hiatus here because we've had a bunch of technical difficulties. As you can see right back there is my camera, which no longer seems to be connecting to my computer. So we're doing this the old school way with the built-in webcam. And trying to get that podcast going. There's something wrong with the artwork or something, and I'm having trouble connecting it to Apple Podcasts. So working on that. But we're going to keep soldiering on. Got a couple things to talk about tonight. Really, it's a couple of issues all combined with the one major issue, which is free speech. For some reason, the left has decided that freedom of speech is no longer a right that they are willing to fight for. They're not willing to put their reputations or their political capital or their lives, I guess, their political lives on the line to fight for free speech. And this is coming in a few ways. The first way, which is coming in the United States, is Sheila Jackson Lee, who has decided to put forward a bill that criminalizes the pre-white supremacy. Basically, if you say something and somebody takes what you said and acts terribly, not based on what you said, but just uses you as a excuse for their evil act, Sheila Jackson Lee wants to basically stop you from saying something. Now, this is probably going to coming after the people who appear in certain manifestos of mass shooters. Mass shooters like to point out right-wing personalities that they like, and left-wing personalities also that they put in. And Sheila Jackson Lee basically wants to say, "Oh, Tucker Carlson, he is talking about things. He can't talk about those things anymore because it could, in theory, lead to a point where somebody's going to act on his words and do something." Obviously, this is the slippery slope argument is long ago dead. I mean, it's beyond a slippery slope. The slope is gone. It's all taken care of. So Sheila Jackson Lee is putting forward that. So reading from the Daily Wire about this, the Leading Against White Supremacy Act, introduced days after the beginning of the new Congress, would enable the Department of Justice to prevent violent activity in relation to white supremacy ideology. The bill does not define white supremacy. Now, if you know anything about bills in Congress, what they are defining in terms they define in the bill are incredibly important. That's my biggest issue with, for example, the abortion law in New York, for example. They changed the law to say the life or health of the mother up to 40 weeks, but they don't define the word health. They refuse to define things because they want to keep it obscure enough so they can do whatever they want. Nevertheless, it adds, back to the article, adds white supremacy-based motivation against any person to existing statutes that already introduce penalties for crimes perpetrated against another person because of race, color, religion, or national origin. The bill defines conspiracy to engage in white supremacy-inspired hate crime as an activity between two or more persons engaged in the planning, development, preparation, or perpetration of a white supremacy-inspired hate crime. At least one of the two or more conspirators must have published material advancing white supremacist ideology, replacement theory, or any hate speech directed against non-white groups on social media or other platforms where the content could be viewed by persons who are predisposed to engaging in any action in furtherance of a white supremacy-inspired hate crime. So let's just put this in perspective regarding especially replacement theory. That would basically make Chuck Schumer guilty of this particular bill, of a hate crime, because Chuck Schumer specifically said that we need to bring in more Hispanics, more illegal immigrants in order to, because there's not a high enough birth rate in the United States. Chuck Schumer said that. That's what replacement theory is. So Chuck Schumer is guilty of it based on this definition. Lee cited testimony from FBI Director Chris Wray, who said that white supremacy represents a major domestic terrorist threat, during a social media exchange with Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado about the legislation. Wray indeed told lawmakers 2 years ago that extremists who advocate for the superiority of the white race were the primary source of lethal attacks perpetrated by violent domestic extremists in 2018 and 2019. Whistleblowers have detailed pressure from within the law enforcement agency to classify cases as domestic violent extremism when the circumstances do not merit such a distinction. A letter sent to Wray last year by Representative Jim Jordan asserted that the FBI's decision to manipulate domestic violent extremist data cheapens actual example of violent extremism. So basically they're playing games with data again. And they need to play these games. This was happening for years after... for a very long time, because there was this really big push to discover what's causing a lot of shootings and attacks. And for a long time, especially during the Obama years, you couldn't go a few weeks without there being a radical Islamic terrorist attack in the West. Many times it happened in America. The Orlando Pulse shooting was the biggest one. And every single time you brought that up at the time, people would say, well, what about white supremacist shootings? It's like, well, yes, those are bad too, obviously. But they're like, well, instead, if you take away 9/11, white supremacists terrorist attacks kill more people than Islamic terrorist attacks. And they were trying to make the point that radical Islamist terrorist attacks weren't a big deal because there were so many white supremacist shootings, as opposed to just trying to fix everything. So Christopher Wray was doing this in 2018 and 2019 because around that time, Trump was trying to ban immigrants and ban travel from 6 Muslim majority countries where there were known terrorist activity. They referred to it as a Muslim ban. It was never a Muslim ban, but they were trying to bring in Christopher Wray to basically say, oh, it's not a big deal. So what they did was they had to fudge the stats on white supremacy terror attacks in order to make it seem like Trump was a racist. That's really what it all comes down to. It all comes down to trying to make Trump a racist, so they basically fudge the numbers on white supremacy, and that way they can keep pushing this notion. So, let's see. This is just the latest of Sheila Jackson Lee, who's been in Congress for, I don't know, my entire life, almost 30 years. She's just trying to keep going with this narrative. Okay. Now, that was the domestic issue regarding free speech. Then there's this Davos issue. So the World Economic Forum is happening again. They want to stop free speech again. This is something that we heard from Brian Stelter. Just take a listen to this. So I couldn't get the clip, but there was basically a conversation starring Brian Stelter, who has done more to create disinformation from his desk at CNN until he was summarily fired, when he was basically moderating a forum on at the World Economic Forum, moderating a panel, and the European woman basically said, "Oh, the United States has really far to go, but they're coming along in terms of hate speech, in terms of hate speech regulations." And it's sick, but she's not wrong, because hate speech regulations do exist in many European countries and Canada. There was a statistic that over 3,000 people in the UK are arrested a year for posts on social media. And it's not just a slippery slope. Like I said, it's here. It's happening. And, we need to really be wary of it. We need to be scared of it. Scared, actually. Because what is hate speech? I am a Jewish person, a proud Zionist. If I say that there shouldn't be a Palestinian state, that there shouldn't be one, because, a Palestinian state would be a terrorist state. Like, let's say I say that. Is that hate speech? I'm sure many people would consider it hate speech on the left. If I say that an election is stolen, whether or not I believe that, if you're saying, is that hate speech? Or maybe because, politicians aren't a protected class. Like, what is hate speech? That's the question. That's always been the question. It's these definitions. They refuse to define things. They don't define white supremacy. They don't define hate speech. They don't define things. They don't know how to define the words man and woman. How could they define any of these terms? So the free speech issue is not over. It's going to be fought every single time. So we need to fight it. That's the biggest issue of our time right now. Okay, that's going to do it for me tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Sorry that this is kind of a crazy episode. It's a little nuts. I'm having these technical issues. Hopefully I'll get them fixed. I just didn't want to go weeks and weeks without an episode, and I want to just keep this going. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Make sure to tell a friend, and we'll see you next time.